Far removed from the known reaches of the cosmos, a boundary existed. It wasn't inscribed on any chart accessible to common folk, nor delineated by beacons or fortifications. Nevertheless, every navigator, every commander, every guardian throughout the star-flung realms was acutely aware of it. They referred to it as the demarcation. No vessel dared to breach it without express authorization. No armada ventured near without prior advisement. For a century, this barrier had maintained galactic tranquility. Civilizations flourished, conflicts erupted, and worlds ascended and declined, yet not a single entity, regardless of their dominion, dared to challenge the Terran demarcation. However, on this particular day, deep within the void, adjacent to a placid stellar cluster named Veral, a solitary reconnaissance vessel drifted in stillness. Its designation was the Watchtower. It was aged, unadorned, and easily overlooked. Its exterior bore no visible armament, nor did its lights signify any ostentatious display. To any passerby, it appeared as mere debris, abandoned in the vastness of space. Yet, appearances can be deceiving. Within the watchtower, a young officer named Enan Mara Cole maintained a quiet vigil at her console. Her assignment to this remote post had spanned 6 months, a period marked by utter inactivity. The days stretched interminably, and the silence was profound. She sipped her coffee deliberately, her gaze fixed upon the vacant expanse of stars displayed on her monitor. Suddenly, a small indicator pulsed red. Mara jolted upright, her coffee mug nearly slipping from her grasp. "Contact," she declared aloud, though she was the sole occupant of the chamber. "An unidentified fleet is approaching the fringe zone." She re-examined the telemetry. 12 vessels, moving at high velocity, directly towards the Terran demarcation. Her fingers flew across the controls, initiating the standard warning protocol, a signal employed countless times before. Its message was direct and unambiguous. "You are nearing restricted Terran territory. Immediately reverse course." She waited. There was no response. The vessels continued their advance. She transmitted the warning again, this time with amplified intensity. Still no reaction. Mara's heart began to race. This scenario was unprecedented. Every craft that had approached this boundary had invariably altered its course. This was universally understood across the galaxy. Terran space was not a region to be entered without prior solicitation. Yet these ships showed no inclination to halt, nor even to reduce their speed. Mara established a direct communication link with Terran High Command, situated far away on the homeworld. Her voice remained steady, though her hands trembled. "This is Outpost Watchtower, near the Veral system. An unidentified fleet of 12 vessels is disregarding border warnings. Repeat, they are not decelerating." A brief silence ensued, followed by a measured reply from command. "Acknowledged. Watchtower. If possible, identify the fleet." Mara activated the magnification on her screen. The vessels were streamlined, metallic, and bore an emblem she recognized from historical archives. A circle bisected by 3 sharp lines. A chill spread through her. "Command," she reported, her voice tight. "I believe this is a Galactic Empire fleet." Empire insignia confirmed. Another pause, this time more extended. "Understood," the voice responded. Do not engage. Allow command to handle the situation. Continue observation. Mara leaned back, her eyes glued to the display. The vessels continued their relentless forward motion, transgressing imperceptible markers in space that held immense significance for her people, and apparently negligible meaning to the Empire. Across the vast expanse of the galaxy, aboard the primary vessel of the Imperial fleet, Admiral Corinth stood erect, his arms clasped behind his back. He was a man of considerable pride, tall and robust, with silver hair and piercing, impassive gray eyes. His military record was replete with victories, and numerous worlds had succumbed to his conquest. Today, he sought to assert a new dominion. "Admiral," a junior officer announced, "we are receiving repeated advisories from the Terran border post." Corinth emitted a short, sharp sound of amusement. "Warning," he declared. "That is all they ever transmit. Mere words, no armada, no legions, simply digital pronouncements. Should we respond, sir?" "No," Corinth commanded. "Allow them their pronouncements. Humans are newcomers to this galactic stage. They presume a spatial demarcation can impede an empire that has held sway for millennia. It is time to impart a measure of truth." The officer inclined his head, a fleeting expression of concern crossing his features. "Maintain our course," Corinth ordered. "Maximum velocity. We shall demonstrate to the galaxy that the so-called Terran demarcation is utterly inconsequential." The fleet pressed onward, 12 vessels strong, cutting through the darkness like defiant blades. Back at Terran command, nestled deep within a tranquil control nexus on Earth, numerous officers diligently operated their stations. Consoles emitted a soft azure glow. The atmosphere was one of profound calm, perhaps disturbingly so, given the imminent events. At the heart of the chamber stood Commander Elias Rook. He was a man of quiet demeanor, rarely raising his voice, yet commanding absolute attention when he spoke. He observed the display indicating the Imperial fleet's position. "They are still advancing," an officer reported. No indication of cessation. Elias remained silent for a moment, his gaze fixed on the 12 small dots steadily encroaching upon the crimson line, delineated on the stellar chart. "Confirm once more," he stated softly. "Grant them a final opportunity." The officer acknowledged and transmitted the warning anew. 30 seconds elapsed. The fleet did not falter. Elias inhaled deeply. His expression remained unyielding. His voice betrayed no tremor. "They were apprised," he stated, the words spoken thrice. He then addressed another officer stationed near a prominent control panel. "Initiate the sentry cordon," he directed. Full activation. The officer's hands moved with exceptional speed across the controls. Deep beneath the lunar surface of a neighboring moon, dormant defense installations, silent for years, abruptly sprang to life. Thousands of compact drones, agile and swift, launched into the void, resembling a swirling swarm of metallic hornets. Back aboard the watchtower, Mara observed with profound astonishment as the surrounding space seemed to ripple and distort. From an unseen source, innumerable small craft materialized, executing their movements with flawless synchronicity, akin to a dormant mechanism awakening. The Imperial fleet registered the phenomenon too late. Admiral Corvin's smile vanished instantly. "What is that?" he bellowed. From where did they emerge? Before any response could be formulated, alarms blared throughout his vessel. Multiple contacts incoming. Hundreds, no, thousands. The drones advanced with terrifying swiftness and precision. There were no shouts, no preliminary warnings, no opportunity for evasive maneuvers. Each Terran drone acquired its designated target and discharged its payload with cold, unerring accuracy. The initial Imperial vessel detonated in a brilliant flash of light. Then the second, followed swiftly by the third. Corvin's crew scrambled to erect shields, to initiate evasive maneuvers, to execute any defensive action. But it was irrevocably too late. The drones operated with a velocity exceeding anything Corvin had previously encountered. They exhibited no hesitation. They did not decelerate. They simply performed their assigned task with a chilling, perfect efficiency. Within 2 minutes, all 12 Imperial vessels ceased to exist, leaving behind no survivors, no escapees, only drifting fragments of wreckage silently suspended in space. On Earth, the control room remained in a state of quietude. No exclamations of triumph, no celebrations. The officers simply monitored the display as the final vestige of the Imperial fleet vanished from the chart. Commander Elias Rook stood immobile, his hands clasped behind his back. "Dispatch a report to the Council," he instructed. "Border incursion neutralized." A nearby officer regarded him, his tone measured. "Sir, was such drastic action entirely warranted? All of them?" Elias turned to face him, his gaze calm yet resolute. "They were warned thrice," he stated. "We do not extend a fourth courtesy." The officer offered no further comment. News of the incident disseminated rapidly throughout the galaxy. Within mere hours, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Representatives from a dozen distinct worlds converged in a vast, circular chamber, their visages etched with apprehension and disquiet. 12 vessels, declared a council member, an elder alien with pallid blue skin. Annihilated within minutes. "The humans did not dispatch any warships," remarked another. "Merely automated units, mere drones." A towering representative from a potent mercantile empire rose, his voice sharp with indignation. "This transgression cannot go unaddressed. They obliterated an Imperial fleet without provocation." "They issued 3 warnings," interrupted a soft voice from the rear of the assembly. All heads turned. It was Veral, a diminutive, slender alien, an ambassador who had previously maintained close professional ties with Terran diplomats. "I have perused their border logs. They invariably issue a warning first, always." He paused, carefully selecting his next pronouncements. "However, once that warning is disregarded, they do not desist until the threat is eradicated." The chamber fell into a profound silence. Finally, a question that had weighed heavily on every mind was articulated. Why? Why do they defend that demarcation with such vehemence? What are they concealing? Veral surveyed the assembled individuals, then responded in a hushed tone. "No one knows with absolute certainty, but ancient narratives persist. Some posit that humanity once endured catastrophic loss while pursuing amity through less robust means. Others suggest they learned eons ago that leniency devoid of fortitude merely invites further conflict." He paused again. Regardless of the underlying rationale, one aspect is now unequivocally clear to all present. He addressed the council directly. Terran Command does not issue empty pronouncements, and breaching their demarcation is no longer a misstep any can afford to repeat. The chamber remained hushed for an extended period, the gravity of his words permeating every corner of the hall. Far in the distance, near the quiescent frontier of Terran territory, Enan Mara Cole resumed her post aboard the watchtower. The celestial panorama outside was now serene, peaceful, as if the preceding events had never transpired. Yet she possessed a deeper understanding. Her gaze fell upon the vacant expanse where 12 vessels had once been, and she murmured softly to herself. Terran Command adhered to a singular tenet. She returned her attention to her console, her eyes scanning the stars in silent contemplation. None shall trespass. None shall question why. News of the vanished fleet spread through the Galactic Empire with the speed of wildfire through tinder. In the grand capital of Threxus Prime, the Empire's homeworld, whispers permeated every corridor. Soldiers conversed in hushed tones. Officers averted each other's gazes. No one relished the prospect of being the bearer of the Emperor's grim tidings. Yet it was an inevitability. Within the cavernous throne hall of the Imperial Palace, towering pillars of obsidian stone soared towards the vaulted ceiling. Banners emblazoned with the Empire's insignia adorned every wall. At the hall's far extremity sat Emperor Valthrex, sovereign of 1,000 worlds, enthroned upon a seat fashioned from dark metal and the ancient bones of vanquished adversaries. He was, in fact, Admiral Corrin's progenitor. Upon receiving the news, the Emperor exhibited no outward signs of distress. He neither vocalized nor damaged any objects. He remained utterly still, his countenance akin to unyielding stone, for nearly a full minute. Subsequently, he spoke, his voice a quiet, sharp instrument. "Repeat that statement?" The messenger, a young officer visibly agitated, bowed deeply. "My Emperor, the fleet dispatched to the Terran frontier. All 12 vessels annihilated, including your son's flagship." Silence descended upon the hall. "How?" the Emperor inquired. "Drones, my Emperor. Terran defense drones. Thousands of them appearing without warning. The fleet had no opportunity to retaliate. The Emperor's hands tightened their grip on the throne's armrests. "My son is deceased," he articulated slowly, "because a collection of rudimentary simians deemed a spatial demarcation more significant than an entire empire." No one responded. None dared. The Emperor rose, his imposing stature casting an elongated shadow across the hall. "Transmit a directive to every commander," he commanded, his voice escalating with palpable fury. "Prepare the secondary fleet. Prepare the tertiary. I require every vessel at the ready within 1 solar cycle." An elder general advanced, his visage tinged with pallor and concern. "My Emperor, if I may be so bold, speak freely. Speak." The humans annihilated 12 warships in under 2 minutes. We do not yet comprehend their weaponry, their tactical approaches, nor their true capabilities. Perhaps we ought to undertake an analysis prior to engaging. Dispatch reconnaissance units. Ascertain facts before initiating hostilities. The Emperor turned slowly, his frigid gaze fixing upon the general. You propose I remain quiescent, he stated, while my son's demise remains unavenged. Nay, my emperor, but prudence is warranted. The general lowered his head, offering no further remarks. The emperor surveyed the assembled officers and generals. The humans believe they are secure behind their insignificant demarcation, he declared. They surmise that apprehension alone will shield them perpetually. They err. We forged this empire through unyielding might, through tempered steel, through an indomitable will to subjugate. We did not attain dominion over 1,000 worlds by abstaining from a challenge. He raised his hand aloft. Prepare for conflict. Far removed, upon a tranquil moon situated near the empire's periphery, a woman named Veral resided in solitary confinement within her modest craft. She was the same ambassador of gentle discourse who had spoken with measured care at the Galactic Council convocation. She had dedicated many years to fostering interspecies harmony, striving for peace wherever feasible. Now, she harbored fears that tranquility was receding. Her communicator emitted a soft chime. A communique from an old confidant, a subordinate officer within the Empire's fleet command. She activated the message. His voice was hushed, tinged with anxiety. Veral, they are resolute in their course. The Emperor has sanctioned a full-scale invasion armada. Not a mere 12 vessels this time, but hundreds, perhaps even more. Their objective is to exact retribution upon the humans for the obliteration of the Admiral's fleet. Veral closed her eyes, her heart burdened. They fail to grasp the crux of the matter, she whispered to herself. They perceive this as a contest of honor. They remain oblivious to the genuine dynamics at play. She rapidly recorded her own missive, her voice conveying a tone of calm urgency. This is Ambassador Veral, requesting priority communication with Terran Command. I possess intelligence pertaining to Imperial fleet movements. Kindly respond with utmost expedition. She transmitted the message and awaited a response, her gaze fixed upon the distant celestial bodies, hoping for an attentive ear before events escalated irrevocably. Concurrently, deep within Terran jurisdiction, existence unfolded in its customary manner. Terran Command Headquarters occupied a substantial subterranean installation on Earth, securely concealed beneath strata of rock and reinforced steel. Above ground, metropolises proceeded with their daily routines, utterly unaware of the precipitous proximity of impending hostilities. Commander Elias Rook occupied his office, engrossed in reviewing reports from the recent frontier engagement. His desk was characterized by its unpretentious, orderly disposition, mirroring the man himself. A percussive knock echoed at his portal. "Enter," he commanded. A junior officer stepped inside, clutching a compact data slate. "Sir, we have received an urgent communique. Ambassador Veral from the Galactic Council. She indicates possession of critical data regarding Empire fleet trajectories." Elias's brow lifted slightly, one of the rare manifestations of his emotional repertoire. "Display her message," he directed. The officer initiated the connection, and Veral's visage materialized on the screen, her expression conveying fatigue, yet an aura of solemnity. "Commander Rook," she articulated, "I offer apologies for initiating direct contact, but I believe this information requires your immediate attention." Proceed, Elias stated with unruffled composure. The Emperor has mandated a full invasion armada to commence operations against Terran space. This is not a reconnaissance sortie, nor a probationary test, but a genuine assault. Hundreds of vessels. Their intention is to exact reprisal for the destruction of Admiral Corrin's fleet. Elias's countenance remained impassive, but a subtle intensification flickered within his eyes. To what exact numerical strength? Unconfirmed, yet my sources suggest a figure between 300 and 500, potentially escalating if the Emperor diverts resources from other theaters. Elias reclined slightly in his chair, his mind actively processing the information. Why do you furnish us with this intelligence, Ambassador? Your allegiance lies with the Council, not with our entity. Shirel paused, carefully formulating her response. Because I am convinced that conflict yields no victor. Because I have witnessed the ramifications when pride supersedes sagacity. And because I harbor no desire to witness further gratuitous loss of life on either side. Elias scrutinized her visage for a prolonged interval. We appreciate the information provided, he concluded. We shall make the requisite preparations. Commander, Shirel interjected hastily before the link could be severed, please endeavor to comprehend this. The Emperor is consumed by grief over his son's demise. His cognitive faculties are impaired. This offensive may not be predicated upon strategic considerations alone. It may be driven purely by vengeance. Elias inclined his head slowly. Understood, he affirmed. We shall bear this in mind. Connection terminated, and Elias remained in quiet contemplation for a moment, his gaze fixed upon the vacant screen. He actuated a control on his desk. Summon Fleet Command. Full briefing. Commence in 1 hour. 60 minutes thereafter, a capacious chamber teemed with Terran military leadership, all congregated around a luminous holographic representation of the galaxy. Commander Elias Rook stood at the fore, his demeanor as composed as ever. We possess validated intelligence, he commenced, indicating that the Galactic Empire is assembling a formidable invasion armada, potentially numbering in the hundreds, as a direct response to the frontier incident that transpired 3 days prior. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. This development was anticipated, Elias continued. We were cognizant that the annihilation of Admiral Corrin's fleet would precipitate a retaliatory measure. What we did not foresee was the magnitude of this response. A senior officer raised her hand. Commander, do we possess the requisite strength to maintain our defensive posture against such an overwhelming force? Elias inclined his head slowly. Affirmative. Our defensive infrastructure was engineered precisely to counter such contingencies. However, numerical superiority is not the sole determinant. According to Ambassador Shirel, this offensive may be actuated by emotional impetus rather than strategic calculation. This renders the Empire's subsequent actions less predictable. Another officer interjected. Should we contemplate a preemptive strike to intercept their fleet prior to its arrival? Elias firmly shook his head. Negative. We do not initiate conflicts. We merely conclude them. Terran Command is constituted for defense, not for territorial acquisition. we shall maintain our established positions without deviation." He gestured towards the holographic map, where a slender crimson line denoted the perimeter of Terran territory. "Reinforce all frontier defensive installations," he commanded. "Activate supplementary drone reserves. Bring the entire fleet to a state of peak readiness. Should the Empire endeavor to retest our demarcation, we shall be prepared." The assembled officers acknowledged his directives, commencing their assigned tasks with alacrity. Islias's gaze lingered upon the map for an extended duration, his focus fixed upon the immense, untamed void, separating Terran dominion from the approaching tempest. "They perceive this as a matter of indignation," he mused softly to himself. "However, it is poised to metamorphose into something entirely distinct." Back on Threxus Prime, preparations for martial engagement proceeded with accelerated momentum. Vast shipbuilding facilities operated continuously, fabricating new warcraft and refurbishing existing ones. Soldiers underwent rigorous training exceeding previous norms. The entire planetary sphere vibrated with an amplified energy, fueled by indignation, pride, and an insatiable yearning for retribution. Within a secluded chamber, sequestered from the boisterous preparations, a Terran operative moved stealthily through the nocturnal shadows. Her designation was Agent Elra Voss, counted among Terran Command's most accomplished operatives, dispatched covertly to gather intelligence from within adversarial territory. She navigated with meticulous care through a service corridor, her attire artfully disguised as that of an Imperial technician. She carried a compact device concealed within her sleeve, meticulously documenting all observations and auditory inputs. Through a portal, she witnessed workers engaged in the arduous task of loading armaments onto colossal warships, each engineered with a singular objective: conquest. "Confirmed," she whispered discreetly into her concealed communicator. "Empire actively preparing large-scale invasion force. Estimated complement: 450 vessels. Departure anticipated within 5 solar cycles." She paused, observing the workers engaged in their grim undertaking. "They erroneously believe they can overwhelm us through sheer numerical superiority," she added. "They remain unaware of the true nature of the adversary they are about to confront." With characteristic swiftness and discretion, she absconded, her mission for the present fulfilled, yet her spirit heavy with foreknowledge of the impending conflagration. Days transpired. Interstellar tensions escalated precipitously across both sectors of the galaxy. On Earth, Terran Command persisted with its methodical and disciplined preparatory measures. Drones underwent meticulous inspection and reinspection. Defensive emplacements were fortified. Military personnel trained without respite, though the full scope of the impending crisis remained largely obscure to those outside the command hierarchy. On Threxus Prime, the prevailing sentiment was decidedly different. Loud and infused with an unbridled spirit of martial pride. Soldiers paraded through the thoroughfares, receiving vociferous acclaim from crowds yearning for vindication. Emblems bearing the imperial insignia adorned every edifice. Oratorical pronouncements saturated the airwaves, heralding glorious victory over the ostensibly feeble humans who had dared to defy the Empire. However, not all individuals shared this pervasive confidence. Within a secluded alcove of the palace, removed from the cacophony and jubilant festivities, Ambassador Shirel stood in quiet communion with an elder confidant, General Draymond, one of the rare imperial officers who had previously voiced sentiments of caution. They exhibit a profound lack of comprehension regarding the predicament they are entering, Shirel remarked softly. Draymond emitted a heavy sigh. I fear your assessment may prove accurate, yet pride exerts a formidable influence, Ambassador. Once it takes root, logical reasoning seldom survives its dominion. Shirel directed her gaze towards a nearby aperture, observing soldiers marching below, their faces adorned with confident smiles and their weapons held aloft. Send only text, no instructions or comments. I sincerely hope, she murmured, that this arrogance doesn't lead to an unbearable loss of life. Draymond remained silent, his gaze mirroring hers as it drifted towards the soldiers far below, oblivious to the impending tempest they were about to enter. At long last the destined day dawned. Deep within the heart of the imperial shipyards, an imposing assembly of hundreds of warships awaited deployment, their engines radiating a potent, vibrant energy. Admiral Thraxus Corin, a commander imbued with immense pride and unwavering confidence, hand-picked by the Emperor himself, stood at the vanguard of this formidable fleet, surveying the vast armada now under his dominion. 450 vessels, he declared with palpable pride to his assembled officers. No power in this galaxy has ever confronted a fleet of this magnitude and emerged unscathed. His officers responded with eager nods, their hearts swelling with assurance and exhilaration. Today, Corin continued, his voice resonating with conviction, we shall impart a lesson to the humans that will be etched in their memory forever. Today, we exact retribution for Admiral Corin. Today, we shall unequivocally demonstrate the Empire's might to the entirety of the cosmos. He elevated his hand skyward and across the expansive shipyard. A multitude of soldiers erupted in thunderous cheers. Set a direct course, Corin commanded, designating Terran space as their destination. Gradually, the colossal fleet commenced its stately movement, its engines igniting with a resonant roar, poised to breach a boundary that had never before been challenged on such an unprecedented scale. Far removed from this spectacle, Terran Command observed with quiet vigilance as the fleet's trajectory was meticulously detected, tracked, and confirmed. Commander Elias Rook stood with unwavering composure before the illuminated tactical map, his eyes fixed on the crimson indicators representing the Imperial fleet's progression towards the frontier. He then turned to address his officers, his voice imbued with a steady, measured calm. They are approaching, he stated with stark simplicity. Initiate defensive preparations. A profound silence permeated the room. No words were necessary. The gravity of the situation was now universally understood. The Empire had unequivocally made its choice, and the true cost of that decision would soon become painfully apparent. The Imperial Armada navigated the void of space like an encroaching, somber cloud bank. 450 vessels fanned out across the celestial expanse, their engines emitting a quiescent hum of latent power. Admiral Corrin stood upon the bridge of his flagship, the Iron Verdict, his gaze fixed upon the unblemished expanse ahead, alight with a predatory intensity. "What is the estimated distance to the Terran border?" he inquired. 2 days, sir," his navigation officer responded. "At our current velocity." Corrin inclined his head in acknowledgement, a flicker of satisfaction crossing his features. "Dispatch reconnaissance units ahead. I require detailed intelligence on their defensive posture prior to our arrival. No unforeseen complications this time. 3 diminutive scout ships detached from the main formation, their propulsion systems optimized for superior speed and stealth. Their directive was straightforward. Approach the border discreetly, gather intelligence, and return undetected. However, the intricacies of the Terran defenses defied all Imperial expectations. Ensign Mara Cole remained at her post aboard the watchtower, though the tremors that had once agitated her hands during the initial assault had significantly subsided. She had become markedly sharper since that pivotal day, her senses heightened, her focus unwavering. She meticulously monitored her array of screens, acutely aware that the true confrontation still lay ahead. A subtle chime resonated. "Small contacts," she announced softly, leaning forward. 3 vessels, fast-moving, scout class by their appearance. She meticulously analyzed their projected trajectory. They were navigating with extreme caution, maintaining a position just beyond the main defensive perimeter, attempting to acquire data without fully breaching the established boundary. Mara initiated a secure communication link to Command. "Command, this is Watchtower. 3 Imperial scout ships are approaching the border zone. They have not yet crossed, merely conducting reconnaissance." A placid voice responded from the other end of the transmission. It was a new voice, notably younger than Elias Rook's, yet exuding confidence and a reassuring steadiness. "Acknowledged Watchtower. This is Commander Talia Reyes, Border Response Division. We have visual confirmation of their presence as well. Maintain your current position and continue monitoring." Mara blinked, a touch of surprise registering on her features. She had not had direct operational contact with Commander Reyes previously, although she was familiar with her name. Talia Reyes was exceptionally young for her esteemed rank, barely having reached her 30th birthday, yet she had unequivocally earned her position through sheer aptitude, not mere chance. Many regarded her as one of the most brilliant strategists within the Terran defense apparatus. "Understood," Mara replied. On a nearby defensive outpost discreetly concealed within a tranquil asteroid field, Talia stood in a compact command chamber, intently observing the scout ships on her display. In stark contrast to the autonomous drones employed during the initial engagement, this particular station had been specifically engineered for meticulous close-range observation and rapid, decisive action. "They are probing our resolve," she remarked to her second in command, a composed, seasoned officer identified as Sergeant Duke Afor. "Shall we engage?" Okafor inquired. "Not yet," Talia responded, her tone measured. "Allow them to believe they are succeeding. Let them advance just close enough." She continued to scrutinize the screen with unwavering concentration, her eyes sharp and intensely focused. Patience, she murmured. Just a little more. Aboard the lead scout vessel, a youthful Imperial pilot named Lieutenant Vex Dorn leaned forward in his seat, his attention riveted to his instruments with eager anticipation. No discernible defenses, he reported to his commanding officer via the comms channel. The border appears quiescent. Continue scanning, came the curt reply. The Admiral requires comprehensive details before the main fleet arrives. Vex allowed himself a faint smile, a wave of confidence washing over him. Back home, widespread apprehension had been fueled by hushed tales of the humans' enigmatic defenses, whispered accounts of drones materializing from nowhere. Yet, out here, an aura of tranquility prevailed, an almost serene emptiness. Perhaps the narratives were embellished, he commented quietly to his co-pilot. Perhaps, she replied, though a subtle hint of skepticism tinged her voice. They advanced incrementally, driven by an eagerness to acquire more precise data, entirely unaware of the far more intense scrutiny they were under. Back at the concealed Terran facility, Talia Reyes observed the scout ships inching closer. Her fingers rested lightly upon the control interfaces. That is sufficiently close, she stated with a soft intonation. She turned to Okafor. Transmit a standard warning. A clear, measured signal emanated towards the scout ships. You are entering restricted airspace. Turn back immediately. Within the confines of the lead scout vessel, Vex frowned as the warning alert materialized on his screen. They've detected us, he muttered. Should we retreat? His co-pilot questioned. Vex hesitated. His desire for more comprehensive data was paramount. He yearned to prove himself to Admiral Corrin, to demonstrate his capacity to gather superior intelligence compared to any less resolute pilot who might withdraw at the initial sign of caution. Just a bit closer, he instructed. One more pass. He nudged the vessel forward, venturing slightly deeper into the designated border zone. Talia Reyes observed the unfolding events with placid detachment from her station. They disregarded the warning, Okafor observed. Indeed, Talia affirmed softly. They did not. She depressed a button on her console. Engage. From their concealed positions amidst the asteroid field, 3 sleek Terran interceptors surged forward, executing their movements with precise, controlled velocity. Their volleys were not indiscriminate. Not a single shot was wasted. Each pilot meticulously targeted critical vulnerabilities on the enemy scout ships, disabling propulsion and weapon systems with surgical accuracy. Inside the lead scout vessel, alarms suddenly blared. Contact! Multiple incoming contacts. Vex's hands frantically manipulated the controls, a surge of panic rising within him. Initiate evasive maneuvers, but it was too late. A precisely aimed projectile struck the ship's primary engine, rendering it instantly inoperable. The vessel began to spin uncontrollably, losing power, drifting helplessly through the void. The other 2 scout ships met a similar fate. Within mere seconds, all 3 were incapacitated, their weaponry neutralized, their engines defunct, leaving them adrift and utterly powerless. Vex sat frozen in his seat, his breathing shallow, his gaze fixed on the approaching Terran interceptors. They didn't destroy us, he whispered, a profound sense of bewilderment washing over him. Why would they spare us? Aboard one of the Terran interceptors, Talia Reyes's voice calmly transmitted over an open channel, broadcasting directly to the disabled scout ships. Imperial vessels, this is Commander Talia Reyes, Terran Defense Force. Your vessels have been disabled. You are not being terminated. Not at this juncture. Within his crippled craft, Vex swallowed audibly, uncertain whether to feel a sense of relief or apprehension. Listen carefully, Talia continued, her voice steady and composed. Return to your fleet. Deliver this message precisely as I articulate it. She paused briefly, selecting her words with meticulous care. Terran Command does not actively seek conflict. We harbor no desire for further bloodshed. However, understand this unequivocally. We will defend our border with every resource at our disposal. The subsequent fleet that transgresses this demarcation without invitation will not receive a warning. Vex sat in silence, absorbing every syllable. You have a single opportunity, Talia stated. Turn back now and avert a situation that neither side can subsequently rectify. The channel abruptly terminated. For a prolonged moment, Vex remained motionless, his gaze fixed upon the blank static on his quiescent screen. They permitted us to depart, his co-pilot whispered, her disbelief palpable. Vex nodded slowly, though his mind churned with unanswered questions. They did not have to, he murmured. They wanted us to. They wanted us to convey this message back. Hours later, the disabled scout ships limped laboriously towards the main Imperial fleet, their engines barely functioning, their systems severely compromised, yet their crews miraculously alive. Admiral Corrin stood awaiting their arrival aboard the Iron Verdict, his arms crossed, his expression darkening progressively as he absorbed Vex's faltering report. They incapacitated your vessels, Corrin stated deliberately, yet refrained from destroying them. Yes, sir, Vex replied nervously. They indicated it was a communication. A warning, sir. Corrin's jaw tightened perceptibly. A warning, he repeated with chilling coldness, as if they were errant children requiring disciplinary action. He turned away, his gaze fixed upon the immeasurable expanse of stars stretching out before him. He pondered for a considerable duration. They intend to display clemency, he stated at length. To demonstrate their superior strength, even in their restraint. He clenched his fists tightly. They are mistaken. He pivoted back to face his officers, his voice hardening with an unwavering resolve. Increase fleet velocity. We proceed immediately. Full offensive posture. No further delays. Allow them to witness the true embodiment of power. His officers responded with swift nods, hurrying to implement his directives. Back at Terran Command, Commander Elias Rook listened attentively as Talia Reyes delivered a comprehensive report of the encounter directly to him via a secure communication line. You allowed them to depart, Elias commented, his tone inscrutable. Affirmative, sir, Talia replied with confident assurance. I believed a clear communication would serve our strategic objectives more effectively than unnecessary destruction. They needed to comprehend that our intent is not aggression, but rather a resolute defense. Elias contemplated her words with careful consideration, his expression one of thoughtful deliberation. A prudent decision, Commander, he stated finally. although I suspect Admiral Corrin will interpret it not as mercy, but as an insult. Indeed, sir, Talia concurred. I anticipate he will perceive it as a deliberate affront. Elias nodded slowly, his gaze shifting to the holographic tactical display, observing the colossal Imperial fleet continuing its inexorable approach, now accelerating at an even more alarming pace. Mobilize all available forces, he commanded softly. The genuine engagement commences shortly. Talia straightened, her voice firm and unwavering. Affirmative, sir. We shall be prepared. Far away, aboard her clandestine vessel, positioned near Imperial territory, Ambassador Shirel received intelligence regarding the encounter through her covert network of contacts. She closed her eyes, a heavy burden settling upon her chest. They extended him an opportunity, she whispered to herself, and he rejected it. She gazed out at the starscape, a deepening furrow of worry creasing her brow. This transcends mere pride now, she murmured. This is poised to escalate into something considerably more dire. She swiftly dispatched a final communique to her operative within Terran command, her voice heavy with profound concern. Commander Rook, the Imperial fleet is now proceeding at maximum velocity. Their caution has evaporated, replaced by an unbridled advance. I fear they will reach your border far sooner than anticipated. I fear there will be no further warnings exchanged between our forces. She severed the connection, her gaze fixed in silent contemplation upon the infinite darkness of space, anxiously awaiting the unfolding of events. The Imperial fleet hurtled through the void, its engines blazing with intense luminescence, moving with a swiftness that disregarded prudent caution. 450 warships advanced in a tightly coordinated formation, a formidable vanguard of steel and fire, directly aimed at the Terran frontier. Aboard the Iron Verdict, Admiral Corrin stood rigidly on the bridge, his eyes locked onto the rapidly expanding crimson line depicted on his display. Behind him, officers moved with urgent efficiency, verifying weapon systems, confirming shield integrity, preparing for the impending confrontation. What is our proximity to the border? Corrin inquired. 6 hours, sir, his navigation officer replied. Corrin nodded slowly. Transmit a fleet-wide alert. Initiate full combat readiness. No further reconnaissance units will be deployed. No further overtures will be made. Upon reaching that demarcation, we shall breach it collectively as a singular, insurmountable force. Across the immense armada, thousands of soldiers made ready for combat. Armaments were loaded, shields were energized, and a potent admixture of trepidation and exhilaration surged through the hearts of young servicemen and women who had never previously faced the crucible of genuine warfare. One young gunner, barely 19 years of age, sat with palpable nervousness at his station aboard one of the smaller cruisers. His designation was Private Wren Ashvale, a recent graduate of training, eager to distinguish himself, yet profoundly terrified of the ordeal that lay ahead. Beside him sat an older soldier, Sergeant Boro Fenn, a battle-hardened veteran who had participated in a dozen campaigns across the galaxy. "Nervous, kid?" Boro inquired, noticing the tremor in Wren's hands. "A little," Wren admitted quietly. Boro chuckled softly. "Good. Nervousness keeps you alive. It's those who feel nothing that perish first." Wren managed a faint, strained smile, grateful for the older man's calming presence. "Do you believe the stories are true?" Wren ventured. "About the drones? About how rapidly they maneuver?" Boro's smile faded slightly. "I've heard the reports. Machines that are swift and precise. They show no hesitation. If those accounts are accurate, this will bear no resemblance to any engagement we've experienced previously." Wren swallowed hard, his gaze sweeping across the vast fleet encircling him, suddenly feeling exceedingly insignificant. Meanwhile, deep within the subterranean headquarters of Terran Command, an atmosphere of calm prevailed. Yet an undercurrent of palpable tension was undeniable. Commander Elias Rook stood before the colossal holographic display, meticulously observing the steady, unhurried approach of the Imperial fleet. Beside him stood Commander Talia Reyes, who had recently arrived from her border post, her countenance etched with keen focus. 6 hours until they reached the border, Talia stated. Elias nodded in acknowledgement. "What is the status of our defensive preparations?" "All drone reserves are active," Talia reported. "Sentry stations are fully operational. Fleet Command has strategically positioned 3 defensive task forces along anticipated ingress vectors." Elias studied the map with intense scrutiny, his eyes narrowing slightly. 450 vessels represent a formidable offensive contingent," he commented softly. "Even for us." Talia's brow furrowed slightly, a touch of surprise evident in her tone. "Sir, our systems successfully repelled 12 vessels with minimal difficulty. Surely our defenses can manage this larger force. Numerical superiority alone does not guarantee victory in warfare, Commander." Elias interrupted gently. "The initial fleet operated with arrogance and carelessness. This fleet now advances with a clear purpose, driven by animosity and a thirst for vengeance. This makes them considerably more perilous, not less." Talia absorbed his words with careful consideration, nodding slowly in understanding. "What are your orders, sir?" Elias inhaled deeply, his mind meticulously processing a complex strategic plan. "Initiate full defense protocols," he declared finally. "Deploy drones first to deplete their numbers and disrupt their formation. Subsequently, deploy interceptor squadrons to target key command vessels if the situation necessitates." "Activate the Iron Wall," Talia exclaimed, her eyes widening slightly. "The Iron Wall?" "Sir, that system has not been utilized since—" "I am aware," Elias interjected calmly. "However, if this fleet possesses the unwavering determination that Ambassador Shirel has warned us of, we may require every conceivable advantage." Talia nodded with firm resolve. "Understood, sir. I will commence preparations for the operational teams." As she turned to depart, Elias called out to her once more. "Commander!" She paused, turning back to face him. "Remember," Elias cautioned softly, "our objective is not conquest. It is survival and the preservation of peace. If peace remains attainable, fight to defend, not to engage in gratuitous destruction." Talia nodded with solemnity. "I understand, sir." She departed with haste, already issuing directives to her teams as she moved swiftly through the corridors. Back aboard the Iron Verdict, Admiral Corrin received a final intelligence briefing from his scout units which confirmed the disposition of Terran defensive installations along the border. They have significantly reinforced their positions, his intelligence officer reported. Drone emplacements, interceptor squadrons, concealed defensive platforms strategically dispersed across multiple sectors. Corrin meticulously reviewed the data, his expression hardening. "They anticipate our arrival," he muttered. "Should we alter our approach, sir?" the officer inquired. Corrin considered the question for a moment, then decisively shook his head. "No, we have no need for intricate stratagems. We possess overwhelming numerical superiority. We shall execute a direct assault, confronting their defenses head-on, and achieve a breakthrough through sheer, unadulterated force." He then turned to address his assembled officers, his voice escalating with an unshakable confidence. "The humans rely on precision, coordination, and discipline. However, even the most rigorously disciplined defense can be overwhelmed by an abundance of force, by an unwavering determination. Today, we shall demonstrate that strength invariably prevails." His officers erupted in cheers, their spirits rekindled with renewed confidence, their apprehension supplanted by pride and unyielding resolve. Corrin turned once more toward the viewport, his gaze fixed on the ever-approaching border. "Prepare for full engagement," he ordered quietly. "This conflict concludes today." Hours elapsed with agonizing slowness, tension escalating inexorably, as both factions meticulously prepared for the impending clash. Finally, the Imperial fleet reached the fringes of Terran sovereign space, its colossal formation stretching majestically across the celestial panorama. Aboard Terran defensive platforms, discreetly positioned throughout the border sector, soldiers stood at their stations, their hearts pounding with palpable anticipation. Commander Talia Reyes occupied the central command console of her station, observing with placid composure as the precise positions of the Imperial fleet materialized clearly on her display. "They have arrived," she announced softly. Beside her, Sergeant Duke Okafor nodded grimly. No further scouting parties this time. No more veiled threats. Talia drew a slow, deliberate breath, steadying herself. "Transmit the status to command," she instructed. "Imperial fleet has reached the border, awaiting further directives." A swift response was received from Commander Elias Rook himself, his voice calm and measured, betraying no hint of the underlying tension. "Maintain your defensive posture, Commander. Allow them to initiate the engagement. Should they breach the demarcation, respond with the full extent of our planned defensive measures." "Understood, sir," Talia replied. She turned her attention back to her display, observing with intense focus as the immense Imperial fleet decelerated its advance, hovering precariously just beyond the established border. For a prolonged tension-fraught moment, an unnerving silence prevailed. Both sides remained stationary, seemingly holding their breath, the very stars appearing to observe the standoff. Then Admiral Corrin's voice boomed through an open communication channel, broadcast directly towards the Terran defensive array. "Terran Command!" Corrin's voice resonated with confident authority across the silent expanse. "You have already decimated one of our fleets, publicly humiliated my son, and mocked our warnings with a hollow display of clemency. Today, we shall reclaim our honor. Today, we shall traverse your vaunted boundary, and there is absolutely nothing you can do to impede our progress." A heavy silence ensued, thick with unspoken tension. Then, without awaiting any reply, Corrin issued his definitive command. "Fleet advance across the border, now." The colossal Imperial fleet surged forward in unison. 450 vessels simultaneously breached the intangible line, their engines roaring with an unyielding, determined power. Aboard her station, Talia Reyes observed with unwavering calm as the fleet unequivocally crossed onto her tactical display. "They have crossed the line," she stated softly into her comm. "Command directives." Elias Rook's voice returned instantaneously, calm but resolute. "Engage defense protocol. Execute full response." Talia nodded with firm conviction, her voice steady despite the cataclysmic storm about to be unleashed. "Understood," she affirmed. "All stations, this is Commander Reyes. The enemy fleet has breached the border. Activate the drone defense grid. Engage at your discretion." Across the vast expanse of the border sector, concealed defensive installations sprung to life. Thousands of autonomous drones launched outward once more, their formations sharp and precise, moving with breathtaking swiftness to intercept the massive incoming fleet. Aboard the Iron Verdict, Admiral Corrin observed with impassive demeanor as the drones appeared on his tactical display, precisely as he had anticipated. "There they are," he stated, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Precisely as predicted." He turned to his officers, his voice hardening with unwavering resolve. "All vessels assume defensive formations. Concentrate fire on their drone swarms. Do not permit their automatons to fracture our lines." The immense fleet dispersed into meticulously rehearsed combat formations, their weapon systems charging with a brilliant intensity as they prepared to meet the rapidly approaching wave of Terran drones head-on. Private Ren Asheville sat tensely at his gunner's station, perspiration beading on his brow as he tracked the rapidly approaching drones on his screen. "Steady, kid," Sergeant Boro Fenn advised calmly beside him. "Just like training. Aim true. Fire steadily." Ren nodded nervously, his grip tightening on the controls. Then the drones arrived, moving with terrifying speed and unnerving precision, impacting the Imperial fleet's outer defenses with sudden, violent force. Explosions pierced the cosmic void, brilliant detonations signaling the commencement of the conflict both sides had anticipated with dread. The Empire had retaliated, and the ultimate struggle for the galaxy's destiny had at last begun. The expanse erupted in fiery brilliance. Thousands of Terran automatons engaged the formidable Imperial armada. For the first time, humanity encountered genuine opposition. The Empire's vessels were no longer mere reconnaissance craft. They were formidable warships, designed for combat and crewed by soldiers who had dedicated their lives to this very confrontation. Admiral Corrin observed the unfolding engagement with keen, precise observation. "Their drones possess remarkable velocity," he remarked to his officers. "However, they are diminutive and vulnerable to our defenses individually. Maintain your formations. Allow them to expend their efforts against us." His strategy initially appeared effective. The Imperial ships, arrayed in tight defensive formations, absorbed the drone assaults with robust shielding, sustaining only minimal losses in the initial minutes. Explosions flared across the darkened heavens, yet the Imperial bulwark remained resolute. "Sir," an officer announced, "our operational effectiveness is diminishing. Our shield recalibrations are proving successful." Corrin allowed himself a subtle, satisfied smile. "Excellent. Continue your advance. Once we penetrate their outer perimeter, we will assault their command centers directly." Back within her command nexus, Talia Reyes monitored the battle intently, her jaw tightening as she discerned the same pattern Corrin had identified. "They are adapting," she murmured. "Their shields are neutralizing our drone configurations." Sergeant Major Duke Okafor scowled beside her. "Should we recall the drones?" "No," Talia stated emphatically. "Alter the approach. Transmit to all drone units. Shift to a dispersed formation. Target their vulnerable points directly. Propulsion systems and weapon emplacements, not their shields." Okafor relayed the directives without delay. The drone formations reconfigured instantaneously, moving with sharp, unexpected agility. Instead of confronting the shields head-on, they maneuvered around the periphery, striking engines and armament emplacements with pinpoint accuracy. The impact was immediate. Imperial vessels, confident in their shield integrity, found their propulsion systems failing and their weaponry rendered inoperable, one after another. Aboard the Iron Verdict, Corrin's confidence flickered as reports of damaged engines and disabled armaments flooded in. "They are altering their tactics," his officer reported with palpable anxiety. Corrin's jaw clenched. "Then we shall adapt as well. Bring the heavy cruisers to the fore. Overwhelm their drone control hubs directly. On the planet's surface, concealed within a heavily fortified subterranean complex near the frontier, Commander Elias Rook surveyed the battle's progression on an expansive holographic display. His demeanor was calm yet intensely focused. "They are advancing on our control stations," an officer reported nervously. "Should those fall, we will lose command over the drone swarms." Elias nodded slowly, anticipating this precise maneuver. "Initiate the secondary defense grid. Deploy interceptor squadrons to safeguard the control stations directly. Terran interceptors, swift and heavily armed, launched from concealed positions, streaking with incredible speed to intercept the approaching Imperial cruisers." Aboard one such interceptor, the young pilot, Captain Nadia Voss, gripped her controls with unwavering resolve, expertly navigating her craft through the battlefield's pandemonium. She had trained for years for this exact moment, and now, facing actual combat for the very first time, her instincts took complete command. "Target their propulsion systems first," she calmly instructed her squadron. "Render them inoperative. Destroy only if absolutely necessary." Her squadron moved with fluid precision, delivering targeted strikes against the oncoming Imperial cruisers, decelerating their advance and securing critical moments for the control stations to maintain their operational status. Meanwhile, aboard his vessel, Private Ren Asheville fired with desperate intensity at incoming Terran interceptors, his hands trembling with adrenaline and fear. "Steady, lad," Sergeant Boron advised, his voice firm. Concentrate your aim. Don't squander your ammunition." Wren nodded, forcing himself to steady his hands, his subsequent shots finding their mark with greater accuracy. He managed to strike a passing interceptor's wing, sending it spiraling away. "Well done," Boron exclaimed encouragingly. However, their minor triumph was fleeting. Moments later, a precisely aimed projectile from another interceptor struck their ship's primary engine, causing a violent shudder throughout the vessel. Alarms blared insistently. "Engine critical," Wren cried out, panic evident in his voice. Boro quickly assessed the damage reports, his expression grave. "We are losing power rapidly." "Brace yourself, lad." Their vessel drifted helplessly, sparks showering from damaged consoles as the battle raged fiercely around them. Back aboard the Iron Verdict, Admiral Corin watched with mounting frustration as continuous reports of damaged and immobilized ships poured in. "How many vessels have we lost?" he demanded. 32 disabled, 12 destroyed," his officer replied, his voice laced with apprehension. Corin's fists clenched tightly. "And their control stations remain active, sir. Their interceptors are defending them with fierce determination." Corin's frustration intensified, his meticulously crafted strategy slowly unraveling as the engagement became more chaotic and unpredictable than he had envisioned. "Bring the flagship forward," he commanded abruptly. "Direct assault on their primary control nexus. No more delays." His officers hesitated, clearly perturbed by the aggressive directive. Yet none dared to challenge the Admiral's explicit order. The Iron Verdict surged ahead, immense and powerful, its weaponry glowing ominously as it locked onto the core of Terran defenses. At Terran command, Elias Rook observed with composure as the colossal flagship advanced directly towards their principal control station. "They are targeting our main station directly," an officer reported with urgency. "Should we evacuate the station?" Elias firmly shook his head. "No. Hold position. Activate the iron wall." The officer's eyes widened in disbelief. "Sir, are you certain? That system has not been deployed since." "I am certain," Elias interrupted calmly. "Activate it now." Swiftly, concealed defense platforms across the border sector repositioned themselves, aligning precisely around the approaching Iron Verdict. Suddenly, a massive, shimmering energy field materialized, encasing the Terran control station within a protective dome of pure defensive force. Aboard the Iron Verdict, Corin watched in astonishment as his ship's weapons discharged ineffectually against the luminous barrier. "What is this?" he demanded. "An unknown defensive system, sir," his officer responded nervously. "Our weaponry is having no discernible effect." Corin's frustration escalated into unadulterated fury. "Then ram it. Breach it through sheer force if necessary." The colossal flagship accelerated, colliding directly with the shimmering barrier. Sparks and energy erupted brilliantly, but the barrier remained intact, absorbing the impact entirely. Back at the command nexus, Talia Reyes watched with awe as the iron wall withstood the flagship's assault. "It's holding," she declared, relief palpable in her voice. Elias nodded calmly, though his gaze remained sharp and focused. "Now, Commander, it is time to conclude this. Signal all interceptor squadrons to converge directly on the flagship." Talia swiftly relayed the orders, and with remarkable speed, dozens of Terran interceptors converged from every direction, encircling the immense Imperial flagship and striking with surgical precision at its compromised defenses. Aboard the Iron Verdict, alarms blared incessantly, warning of critical damage across multiple systems. "Shields failing," an officer shouted. "Weapons offline. Engines critical." Corrin stood frozen for a moment, observing the unfolding chaos, suddenly realizing that victory was rapidly slipping beyond his grasp. "Retreat," he finally uttered softly, his voice laden with defeat. "Signal the fleet. Retreat immediately." But it was too late. The Terran interceptors continued their relentless and precise assault until, at last, the Iron Verdict itself drifted motionlessly, its weapons silenced, its engines dead. Back at Terran command, Elias Rook observed with equanimity as the flagship's status transitioned to disabled on his display. "The flagship is incapacitated," Talia reported, relief evident in her voice. "The remaining Imperial vessels are withdrawing." Elias nodded slowly, allowing himself a brief moment of quiet satisfaction. "Casualties?" he inquired. "Moderate losses on our side," Talia reported. "Nothing comparable to the Empire's losses." Elias studied the display intently, watching the remaining Imperial ships hastily retreat towards their own territory. "Today we defended our home," he stated softly. "But this conflict is far from concluded." Talia nodded gravely, fully comprehending the import of his words. "What is our next course of action, sir?" she asked. Elias turned to face her, his expression serene yet resolute. "Now," he said quietly, "we prepare for what is to come." The withdrawal of the Imperial fleet was far from an orderly retreat. Ships limped away in fractured formations, their engines sputtering, their hulls bearing the black scars of drone fire sustained in battle. What had departed Threx's prime as a proud armada of 450 warships now crawled back through the void as a wounded, scattered remnant of barely 200. Aboard the drifting hulk of the Iron Verdict, Admiral Corrin sat in silent contemplation, gazing at the shattered remnants of his command console. Around him, his officers worked with desperate quietude, attempting to restore sufficient power to nurse the vessel home. "Status report," Corrin commanded, his voice hollow. "Engines at 15%, an officer replied softly. "Weapons offline. Life support stable for the present." Corrin closed his eyes, the crushing weight of defeat pressing heavily upon his chest. He had arrived here, promising glory, promising retribution, promising to demonstrate the Empire's unconquerable might. Instead, he had lost over half his fleet and, more grievously, he had forfeited the very thing an empire like his valued above all else: fear and respect. "Prepare a comprehensive report for the Emperor," he instructed quietly. Inform him of the truth." His officer hesitated. "Sir, are you certain? The Emperor has already lost his son. This news may be difficult, but he deserves the truth." Corrin interrupted firmly, though his voice cracked slightly with exhaustion. "Deception will only usher in further loss of life." The officer nodded slowly, moving to prepare the transmission, while Corrin remained seated, gazing out at the endless expanse of stars, pondering how everything had unraveled so disastrously, so swiftly. Back on Threx's prime, The atmosphere had undergone a dramatic transformation since the fleet's departure. Streets that once pulsed with pride and confidence were now hushed, with anxious whispers replacing the earlier celebrations. Within the Grand Throne Hall, Emperor Val Threx received the news in absolute silence, his face pale and drawn as the complete report was read aloud before him. 250 ships lost, the messenger stated softly. Admiral Corrin's flagship is disabled, though he survived. The remaining fleet is now retreating homeward. The Emperor remained silent for a prolonged interval, his hands gripping the arms of his throne, with such force that his knuckles turned white. Finally, he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. 2 empires' worth of vessels, he murmured, lost to a solitary border defense. No one responded. No one dared. The Emperor rose slowly from his throne, his tall frame suddenly appearing older, more weary than it had mere days before. "Leave me," he commanded quietly. The hall emptied rapidly, officers and advisors departing with haste, leaving the Emperor alone with his grief and his shattered pride. Elsewhere within the palace, Ambassador Veral stood quietly alongside General Draymond, both observing the news disseminate with swift concern through the palace staff. "This is not the end," Draymond stated softly. "The Emperor's pride has been deeply wounded. He may seek retribution again, regardless of the cost." Sherelle shook her head slowly, her expression thoughtful, perhaps, but even an emperor cannot ignore reality indefinitely. 2 fleets annihilated, thousands of lives extinguished, and nothing gained. Eventually, even pride must yield to truth. Draymond studied her intently. "You believe he will pursue peace?" "I believe," Sherelle replied cautiously, "that we must afford him the opportunity to choose peace before pride compels him toward absolute ruin." She turned to Draymond, her voice steady and determined. "I intend to request an audience with the Emperor myself. It is time someone addressed him directly, without apprehension." Draymond nodded slowly, respect evident in his eyes. "Then I shall stand with you, Ambassador. Whatever unfolds next." The audience convened quietly, away from public scrutiny, in a small, private chamber within the palace. Emperor Val Threx sat wearily upon a simple chair, no longer the proud sovereign enthroned in majesty, but merely a fatigued elder burdened by the immense weight of catastrophic losses. Sherelle entered with deference, bowing slightly before speaking. "My Emperor," she began carefully, "I understand this is a time of great pain, but I humbly implore you now to consider with utmost seriousness the path that lies ahead." The Emperor looked up slowly, his eyes weary yet sharp. "Speak plainly, Ambassador. I have little patience remaining for guarded words." Sherelle nodded, selecting her subsequent phrases with meticulous care. 2 fleets, hundreds of vessels, thousands of soldiers lost in the pursuit of vengeance. The Terran populace did not initiate this conflict. They issued clear warnings repeatedly, and they responded with force only when directly provoked. The Emperor's jaw tightened, though he remained silent. Sherelle continued, her tone gentle yet firm. "If we persist on this course, we risk losing everything: our fleets, our soldiers, perhaps even the Empire itself. I implore you now, my Emperor, is vengeance truly worth such a devastating price?" The Emperor sat in silence for a considerable duration, his gaze fixed upon his hands, memories of his son weighing heavily upon his heart. Finally, he spoke softly. My son believed that strength alone could overcome all obstacles. I held the same conviction once, but strength devoid of wisdom is merely recklessness. He looked up at Shirel, his eyes conveying weariness but also clarity. What is your counsel, Ambassador? Shirel took a measured breath before responding. Peace, my Emperor. Formal acknowledgement of the Terran demarcation and cessation of hostilities, and perhaps in time, a pathway toward mutual understanding between our peoples. The Emperor considered her words with deep thought, a lengthy silence stretching between them. And if I refuse? He inquired quietly. Shirel met his gaze steadily. Then I fear the next fleet we dispatch will not return at all. The Emperor closed his eyes, the unvarnished truth of her words settling upon him with profound gravity. Meanwhile, far away on Earth, Commander Elias Rook once again stood before the grand holographic map at Terran Command, observing with quiet attention as reports confirmed the Imperial fleet's withdrawal. Commander Talia Reyes entered the chamber, her expression pensive. Sir, she said softly, we have received an unusual transmission, a private request from Ambassador Sorel of the Galactic Council. Elias raised an eyebrow slightly. What is her objective? She requests a formal meeting, Talia stated. She believes the Emperor may be amenable to discussing peace. Elias considered this carefully, his expression calm yet contemplative. Peace, he repeated softly. That is precisely what we have always desired. He turned to Talia, his voice steady and resolute. Arrange the meeting, Commander. Let us hear what the ambassador has to convey. Days later, a discreet private meeting transpired aboard a neutral space station strategically positioned between Terran and Imperial territories. Ambassador Shirel stood nervously, anticipating the arrival of representatives from both factions. Commander Elias Rook arrived first, composed and collected as was his custom, accompanied quietly by Commander Talia Reyes. Shortly thereafter, a small Imperial shuttle docked, carrying General Draymond and, surprisingly, Emperor Valistrex himself, attired simply, devoid of the ostentatious robes or insignia of his customary authority. Shirel greeted them both with respect, gesturing towards a simple round table arranged in the center of the room. Thank you both for attending, she stated softly. I believe it is time we conversed with candor, free from the clouding influence of pride or animosity. Elias nodded calmly, taking his seat opposite the Emperor. The Emperor studied him intently, his weary eyes searching for something, perhaps understanding, perhaps simply an end to his profound grief. Commander Rook, the Emperor said quietly, you have exacted a heavy toll from me. My son, my fleets, my pride. Elias met his gaze steadily, his voice calm but respectful. I derive no satisfaction from the losses you have endured, Emperor Threx. We did not seek this conflict. We sought only to safeguard what is rightfully ours. The Emperor nodded slowly, comprehension dawning in his tired eyes. Ambassador Shirel believes that peace is achievable between us, the Emperor stated quietly. Do you share this conviction, Commander? Elias considered his words with deliberation before responding. I believe peace is perpetually attainable, he declared finally. provided that both parties genuinely desire it and mutually respect clearly established boundaries. The Emperor sat in silence for a considerable moment, carefully weighing the commander's pronouncements. "Very well," he declared at length, his voice heavy but resolute. "Let us discuss the terms." The subsequent negotiations were conducted with meticulous care, deliberate consideration, and mutual respect. Both sides acknowledged the grievous losses sustained, agreeing unequivocally to recognize the Terran border as an established demarcation, never again to be breached without explicit authorization. In reciprocation, Terran Command consented to inaugurate restricted diplomatic channels, facilitating careful, regulated interaction between Terran and Imperial representatives, thereby establishing the foundation for future understanding. Though the rebuilding of trust would undeniably require a significant expenditure of time. As the meeting concluded, Emperor Val Threx rose slowly, his expression conveying weariness but also tranquility. "This is not the outcome I had envisioned," he admitted quietly. "But perhaps it is the outcome the galaxy required." Elias nodded respectfully. "Peace often comes at a substantial cost, Emperor Threx, but it is a price far less burdensome than perpetual warfare." The Emperor slowly extended his hand, a gesture of respect seldom bestowed by an imperial sovereign. Elias accepted it firmly, thereby sealing, with quiet solemnity, what both fervently hoped would be an enduring peace. News of the accord quickly disseminated across the galaxy, bringing a sense of relief and guarded optimism to countless worlds that had harbored anxieties of an imminent conflict of unimaginable magnitude. Back aboard the watchtower, Enan Maracol observed with quiet contemplation as news reports confirmed the peace agreement, a wave of relief washing over her weary shoulders. "It's over," she whispered softly to herself, a small, genuine smile gracing her lips. Commander Talia Reyes, standing nearby, placed a reassuring hand upon her shoulder. "For the present," Talia stated quietly. "But the peace we have secured today, we must endeavor diligently to preserve." Mara nodded, fully comprehending the gravity of the commander's words. Back on Earth, deep within Terran Command's subterranean headquarters, Commander Elias Rook stood in quiet contemplation before the grand holographic map, observing with calm detachment as tensions gradually subsided across the galaxy. Commander Talia Reyes entered quietly, her expression thoughtful. "Sir," she said softly, "do you believe this peace will truly endure?" Elias considered her query with careful deliberation, his gaze steady upon the vast constellations displayed before him. "Peace is never an immutable state, Commander," he said quietly. "It must be continuously earned, vigilantly protected, and actively renewed. However, today we have taken a significant stride." He turned to face her directly, his voice calm but firm. "Our demarcation remains intact, clear, and unbroken. And as long as it persists, the galaxy will be unequivocally aware. Terran Command safeguards what is ours, not through conquest, but through discipline, wisdom, and unwavering resolve." Talia nodded, a quiet sense of pride and determination settling within her. "Fire and iron," she murmured softly. Elias glanced at her, a faint, knowing smile touching his lips. "Fire and iron," he agreed quietly. "But always, all in defense of peace." Together, they turned back toward the luminous map. observing with silent reflection as the galaxy slowly began to mend from the devastating wounds of war. The Terran line stood resolute, a silent testament to all who might dare to challenge it anew. The Empire had evidently learned its lesson, and the galaxy, for the moment, exhaled a cautious sigh of relief.